We are incredibly excited to reveal Marvel's Avengers to the world.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems.
This game is an absolute mess on multiple levels.
As Stan Lee said, we're going to put the human in the superhuman.
Though it's let down by its shallow live game mechanics.
The game is barely averaging a peak of over 5,000 players a day on Steam.
Crystal Dynamics announced that it will be pushing the next-gen versions of the game into next year.
They posted a roughly $67 million operating loss.
Games fail all the time. From the high-budget blunders like Lawbreakers, the Ouya, and even the early release of No Man's Sky, games fail more often than not. But it's not often the game fails as badly and as quickly as Marvel's Avengers. Not only did it have everything going for it, such as the best brand recognition ever, a follow-up to the highest grossing movie ever, and the promise of an upgraded experience on new consoles right when they launch, when, let's face it, there really isn't anything else to play that's new. It's hard to believe that a game in 2020, starring Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, and for some people, Spider-Man, would flop so badly it cost its publisher over $65 million in the first few months, and things only seem to be getting worse from there. So, what went wrong? Now, before we get into numbers, speculation, and just why a game that had everything going for it underperformed, let's look at the game itself. Now, I know that games do bounce back from critical failure. No Man's Sky is a perfect example of this. But unlike No Man's Sky, Avengers just doesn't seem to have that it factor that can make it a slow burn success. The game itself, while not terrible, isn't that great. From the store brand character designs to its unnecessary Destiny-like looter elements and its awkward 2 games in 1 presentation, unfortunately there's a little bit more going against it than for it. Unlike Sony's exceptional Spider-Man game from 2018, Avengers is a mishmash of single-player story-driven campaign and a games-as-a-service carrot-on-a-stick time killer. While the campaign itself is pretty good and the newcomer Kamala Khan is a refreshing take on the player avatar, that's pretty much as far as it goes. And the story isn't terrible, but it's not amazing either. On the other hand, the multiplayer is where the game goes from a decent to extremely forgettable adventure. So something sort of like Destiny 1.0. There's a lot of grind here, and the rewards aren't as amazing as one would expect unless you chew really crappy gum. Matchmaking is spotty, and not to mention the performance on base consoles just isn't really there. Unfortunately, this isn't a game you can play on new systems at launch either, so tough luck there. I mean, you can play him, but you're not playing him like how you should. So for the sake of an argument, let's just say you can't really play it the way that you should play a game on the $500 Xbox that I bought, that I've just been playing the free Call of Duty game I was playing on my PS4. The Avengers name holds a lot of weight post-MCU, so when the initial impressions came out during E3 2019, it had a lot of people hyped. Even I was caught up in the hype machine.
Seems to be going for spectacle. There's QTEs in it with all the cool stuff.
Getting to play a game as Iron Man, Captain America, and maybe Spider-Man, if you spent money on the correct system, seemed like a pretty awesome proposition. So when the first beta launched and expectations came down to earth a bit, it may have been a sign that this may not be the next billion-dollar IP Square was banking on. At launch, Avengers was actually pretty successful. It boasted the useless title of second biggest digital launch ever in its publisher Square Enix's history, and sales seemed to be pretty decent in the face of average reviews and a less than stellar beta. But the party was over as soon as it began. Pretty much after the game launched, it was reported to lose a hefty amount of its player base. Even after the first patch that boasted nearly 1,200 fixes. Maybe you should have released it a week or two later. I don't know. Crazy thought, huh? It's reported that PC players almost immediately began to have matchmaking issues, and console players were falling off hard. At one point, in less than 2 months after the launch of the game, it was reported to have a player base of roughly 700 users per hour. For comparison, Destiny 2, a game that's been out for 2015, usually sees a concurrent player base of about 85,000. So 750-ish players per hour, less than 2 months after release, with the Avengers name attached to it, is pretty horrendous, especially for a game that touts itself as a live service. But the bad news only gets worse from here. Since before the game's launch, players were promised a diverse and robust cast of superheroes to play as, from the obvious PlayStation-only inclusion of Spider-Man, to the more lesser-known heroes like War Machine and Hawkeye's kid.
It's, complicated.
Okay.
Spider-Man, which is arguably more popular than the entire Marvel roster combined, was announced as a PlayStation exclusive. While this makes sense from a business perspective since Sony, owns them, this irked gamers and potential buyers all over. because they couldn't play as Spider-Man if they didn't own the correct platform. Platform exclusivity isn't anything new, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. The issue here is locking an entire character, who is arguably the most popular of the franchise, to one platform. While games like Destiny and Call of Duty do this every year, the exclusives are usually small, and come to the other platform in a decent amount of time after launch. Launching an entire character, campaign, and everything comes with it not only shuts out 2/3 of your potential player base, but it also demotivates even the most faithful supporters if they don't own a PlayStation. But in turn, we did get probably one of the strangest quotes from a developer I think I've ever seen in video games. So the beauty of Spider-Man and what Spider-Man represents as a character in this world is, again, it comes back to the relationship with PlayStation and Marvel. We happen to be the ones who can execute and deliver when it comes down to choices of where and what Spider-Man can be. That's a relationship question that PlayStation absolutely has the rights to, that, as you guys know, with Sony's ownership there, and Marvel with Sony saying, hey, this is something we can do, this is something we can do on this platform. And as creators, we have this opportunity that we can make something unique and fun and awesome. We love the idea of being able to bring this character to PlayStation players, and as far as everybody else goes too, because now it's talking less than a week ago, we have 2 characters announced within a matter of 5 days. The future is bright. People get fixated on one thing as opposed to you're going to have hundreds of hours of content and years of storylines ahead of us, and new worlds and visions and new heroes and stuff. How do you announce it? But I really do think people look at this and say, yeah, okay, we understand the business behind that, but in general, we're making this game better. We want to see the place where you can get to play the superhero fantasies out with my Avengers team that we keep growing with new characters. Characters haven't even guessed that they're going to come to this roster down the road and new regions as well. So I'm very excited for the future of everything all platforms. Yeah, whatever that means. Even more so when the reaction to the other DLC is less than lukewarm. When looking at everything from the game's ho-hum campaign, lackluster game as a service, glitches and bugs, lack of meaningful DLC and endgame content, and its Oscar-worthy acting.
Everybody always portrays him as this super confident character.
Keep in mind, this game cost about $200 million between development and marketing costs, and was slated to be an ongoing platform that Square could hopefully use to print money for years to come. In an earnings call, company president Yosuke Matsuda stated that initial sales of Marvel's Avengers were lower than we expected, and completely offset the amortization of the game's development costs. While they do expect the game to eventually turn a profit, if things go the way they do with these games, it's a very long road ahead. It's not to say Avengers is doomed. I mean, look at Fallout 76, No Man's Sky, even Square Enix's own Final Fantasy XIV. There's always a chance for these things to turn around. But more often than not, that's just something that doesn't happen. It's gonna be a steep hill to climb. We all kind of know where this is probably gonna go. But who knows? I could be wrong. In a year, we could all be playing Avengers with the screen time DLC. Yeah, he's a character who huffed a bunch of internet gas and became a X-Men or something. Oh god, comic books suck. Never mind. Hey everybody, happy Christmas season. I've still got Halloween lights, but I do have some Christmas lights up on top of the Halloween lights, but I'm too lazy to take those down, so I'm just gonna keep adding things until my electric bill is too expensive. Bit of a short one here. Obviously it's a little reactionary, but I don't know, I just find it interesting that this game that came at literally the end of the generation is fast tracking on its way to probably be the biggest flop in a generation that lasted way too long. I don't know, it's something that I think like in a year it'll be interesting to look back and see that like if all these videos that are kind of saying like, oh, this thing failed are wrong, or if they're totally right and lesson learned. Thanks for watching. Do that thing everyone says to do at the end of a video, but don't feel pressure to do it because that is stupid. Get that Christmas shopping done because I don't know, it's always kind of sucks, but whatever. Just buy everybody Funko Pops. That'll always make them mad. Yeah. All right. Until next time. Take care.